Adoption was legalised in 1952, since when over 40,000 adoptions have taken place, affecting nearly every family in Ireland. These are some of their stories. Tressa Donnelly was born in 1940 to an English mother and an Irish father. She was brought up in the leafy London suburb of Greenwich, but as a teenager in the early 60s, she was quickly drawn to the bright lights of the vibrant London club scene.
I, of course, got involved in this world of jazz clubs and artists and writers and poets and all those things. I was in a relationship with, as the women's magazines would say, an older man, and he was a jazz musician. I was very young. I think I was probably about 19 when I first met him, and he was 31. And then I got pregnant and I decided I wasn't going to tell him, and I didn't. I ran away.
When Tressa told her mother she was pregnant, the effect of the news was devastating.
We were an upstanding family, so of course when all this happened, it was an absolute disaster.
Through the local convent, her mother organised for her to be sent to a private nursing home in Dublin to have her baby.
Mum paid. I was a paying guest. I read a lot. I used to go to the library. I used to play classical music on the radio so that my baby would hear this lovely music, and I'd read aloud so that he'd get a really good education through me. And I'd read him poetry and stuff.
While in the nursing home in Dublin, on the 13th of March 1961, Tressa gave birth to her son, André.
I leapt off that table, would you believe, and I went down a flight of stairs to the telephone in the hallway, and I phoned my mum. And I said, I've just had a little boy. And she said, oh, right. And that was the end of the conversation. That's the only thing she ever mentioned. Never, ever mentioned ever again.
When she realised there was no way she could bring the baby back home to London, Tressa came up with another plan.
I asked the people in the nursing home if I could stay there with them and work in Dublin, and them look after the baby for me while I was at work. And they said, no, married women don't go to work in Ireland. In fact, I found out they already had a family in mind for me. Well, I was told under no circumstances should I touch him, because it wouldn't be fair, because the first holdings of the new baby should be with the adopted mother, because she had to bond. I wasn't to bond, because it would be destructive to the child. So he was at the foot of my bed and he was making little baby noises, little ticking noises. I, in fact, did pick him up very guiltily, and in fact I christened him. I baptised him with some water that I had in the room with his name. And then but I didn't tell anybody, because I had actually touched him and I wasn't meant to. Put him back in the cot. That's what happened that night. And then first thing in the morning, they came and took him away. And that was the last I saw of him.
50 years later, Tressa is still haunted by memories of that traumatic spring morning in Dublin.
I did see the people come. They weren't young. I looked over the banister and I could see them downstairs going into the front room, which was the visitors' room, and I knew what they were there for. A couple of days after André's birth, I was given these 3 sheets of paper to sign, and to be quite honest with you, I didn't know what I was signing. I was in a tiz. I mean, I signed them all, the 3 of them, on the same day, one after the other, and I shouldn't have done. I should have signed one of those much later.
The papers Tressa signed were formally to consent to having her son legally adopted through the adoption agency. However, Tressa had never heard of the address in Dublin listed as her residence, nor was the signing witnessed, although there was a solicitor's signature added later. According to the 1952 Adoption Act, the final consent form should only have been signed by Tressa 6 months after Andre's birth, giving her time to change her mind if she wanted to.
My mother said to me, I must never tell anybody, especially not a man. Nobody will want you because you're soiled goods, that's right. And a man will never want to bring up another man's child, so never. And, you know, the child will suffer because it will be ostracised. You mustn't do that.
Tressa married Dennis Reeves in 1962. They'd been friends since they were 15.
I realised after I married Dennis, and when I used to get upset and cry about it, that he was always very nice. And of course I could have kept him, and Dennis would have taken him on.
When they had their own first child, a little girl called Miranda, Tressa found memories of her young son Andre came flooding back.
I used to get terribly upset because I would wonder whether, is she feeding him properly? What's he wearing? You know, is he when the kids all get mumps and measles and chickenpox, has he got those? I did worry a lot about whether he was all right, and I was desperate to find out whether he was all right. When I went back to Dublin some years later to try and find him, and I went to the agency, and they said to me that they had no files. Was I sure I'd had this child? I went up to the house, and the girl who answered the door was the midwife. And she said to me, oh, I knew you'd come back. And she said, there's no record of it. You won't be able to ever find him because there's no paperwork or record of where he went or anything like that. I'm really sorry.
Devastated at the news that the adoption agency had no record of her having given birth, and therefore there was no way of finding her son, Tressa spent the following 20 years bringing up her 4 daughters with her husband Dennis. She then decided to approach the agency again to find out more about Andre's adoption.
It didn't cross my mind that it wasn't a legal adoption, not until I got a letter from the director. And in this one, for instance, I was told that Andre was placed with a family in Ireland in March 1961. This family appears to have taken him as their own, and there was no formal adoption order made. The family had another child adopted in the same way. Now, that was the first time I knew that he wasn't formally adopted. He wasn't legally adopted.
Information from the adoption agency led Tressa to believe that Andre had been registered as the natural son of his adoptive parents and not as her son. His date of birth was also changed on his official birth certificate, which is a legal document. No record of his actual birth or adoption existed.
There was no way of him tracing us if he wanted to. He couldn't trace me because my name wasn't anywhere in his life. Information was given to me, and that was about him wearing glasses. I mean, good at handball, and he was a good boy at school. And then later on he got married, apparently, and had 3 children. Then another time I was told that he was divorced and he went to Australia. But the mother said that she wouldn't let him know that he was adopted because he might get upset. I was fortunate enough to be able to go back a couple of years ago, and I registered him myself, and this is the birth certificate that I should have been able to find years ago. And I did go down and get it, and I'm very pleased that I did get it. That is his birth certificate. Andre Donnelly, Monday the 13th of March 1961, male, 37 Hoath Road, County Dublin, Ireland. My name on it. I'm not necessarily wanting to find him. I do, of course, but what is more important than that is him finding me. He needs to know that he's got a mother, a natural mother, and that he's got sisters and cousins and things over here. That's what needs to happen. He might not want to meet me at his age, but he needs to know I exist. That's the important thing, I think.
Tressa's husband Dennis worked all over the world as an engineer, but in 2005 they moved to Penzance in Cornwall.
I mean, the reason we came down here was because our eldest daughter got very sick with cancer, and we came down here to mind her and to mind her children.
Miranda was the eldest of Dennis and Tressa's 4 daughters, and she and Tressa had a particularly strong bond.
She said she had 3 sisters and a brother. Yes, she always did that, yes. And she called her youngest child, the one who lives with me, Gabriel Andre. All the years I was doing my search, we had an arrangement that if I died, she would take the search on. But there's no need for that now. 2 years after my daughter died, my husband died. And I couldn't take that. And I gave up all my hobbies, really. Just getting through the day, I think. I get mad about it, but I can't really afford inside my head to get that mad because it's too upsetting. I've got to keep going because I've got a job to do with bringing up kids and stuff. But it does make me mad, yes. I will keep going, yeah. I don't know for how long, really. I'm getting old now. When this all started, my red hair started to go grey, and I was very surprised to see I had this little white cap underneath this one. And I immediately got sad because I thought if ever my son turns up, he would never have known me as a redhead. Isn't that funny? That's what I thought. I was quite sad about that. He would never have seen me with red hair. There you are.
Tom and Breege Walsh from Sligo decided to start a family a few years after they were married.
I did get pregnant once in 1996. I had a miscarriage at 13 weeks, so I thought it would happen again, but it didn't.
We didn't discuss it a whole lot up until the time we kind of accepted that it wasn't happening, and we just said we'd investigate the option.
We had applied for domestic adoption, but that didn't work out. Well, we seemed to have got lost in the system and it never happened for us. We thought we'd look at inter-country adoption.
Once Tom and Breege decided to adopt from another country, they settled on Russia.
At the time, people would say if you wanted specifically to ask for a boy or a girl, there was a waiting period. But we said, we didn't mind. If you give birth to a child, you don't have the choice of is it a boy or a girl. So we kind of left it in the lap of the gods, we'd say. We got this email on I think it was the 16th of January 2003, and we were told this little girl was available for adoption and our names were the next on the list. And of course we wanted to go there and then, but we got this photograph of her and it was the most beautiful photograph. I suppose it's like somebody giving birth having their scan, Her hands looked blue actually in it, and I actually worried was there something wrong with her hands. But I discovered afterwards that they were blue from the cold because I said that the place where they were was, it was cold, We had heard of a few people that had adopted from Russia, no one that we personally knew. I have to say it was so overwhelming, the whole thing was. And we went into this airport and all this talking, it seemed so dark, and I remember being scared in my life, you know, this language, you know, no language whatsoever, standing there too, I don't know what, waiting for someone to come along. Hard to describe it. You know, it was like, I suppose, having a baby. It was just such a special time. You see this little thing coming into the room, and you know that hopefully she's going to be yours.
You play together, okay?
As we got to know her, then like, it was better again, because
she was very easy.
She was she was a really placid child, and she still is the same way to this day. I wanted to go there and then and take my beautiful little girl home with me, but I wasn't allowed. We waited until I think it was the 28th of February. We brought her out of the baby home, and that was probably definitely the happiest day of my life.
It's just like getting a new baby, really, you know.
People talk about winning the lotto, you know, the lotto is nothing compared to something like that, you know, but same for having a baby, you know, I suppose it's just such a special time, you know. My sister died the year before we adopted Ketrin. Her name was Catherine. She knew we were going to adopt, so I promised her before she died that if we got a little girl, that we'd call her Catherine. We had to get her Russian passport organised before we came home, and when we got it back, they had Ketrin Ivana, which we kept was her Russian name, so we kept that as her second name. And it was K-T-R-A-N, and we thought that was a legal document, so we thought, well, that's good, we'll go with that spelling. And then we were told we could have called her absolutely anything when we came home, that it didn't really make any difference. She was just such a placid child, slept all the way on the plane. And I think we were trying to fight over whose knee she was going to sit on. I think I won. It was just such a wonderful feeling, you know, that we were finally back and that she was ours, you know. Everybody was so excited to see her. There was a race out to see who could get out to the car first to see her, my three sisters. Of course, they had banners everywhere for us, and flowers and teddy bears and everything, so it was lovely. There's Ketrin and Pop tonight. They arrived home. She arrived home to Ireland. Do you remember that, Pop?
Mm-hmm.
My dad, Pop, used to come over every morning to see her, and he fed her porridge every morning for a long time. Do you remember that, Ketrin and Pop used to feed her every morning? Do you?
Yeah.
It was a very special time for him as well, you know, and they still have a very close bond, both of them, you know. Ketrin has blossomed, as in, she was a very serious little baby when we got her first, and you know, she's the most beautiful smile.
Now that's teenage, so I don't know if Mum's happy enough for you, 13 or 14 old.
No, I don't think so. She still can be quite serious, but size-wise, I mean, you know, she was a tiny little thing, and I think I was obsessed with feeding her in the beginning to try and strengthen her up, you know. Nice doggy. I suppose we always felt that we didn't want Ketrin to be on her own, and maybe apart from the only child part of it, the fact that she was adopted, we thought maybe it'd be nice for her to have someone that she could associate with that or identify with her, we'll say, as she gets older.
Tom and Breege returned to Russia in the new year of 2006. They'd been told about a little boy for adoption there.
We would love to have got back to the baby home where Ketrin was, but there was no children available for adoption in that region at the time. So we went to a place called Orenburg. Daniel came in with a big smile on his face, and he's still smiling to this day. First of all, Daniel went directly from the hospital where he was born to the baby home. So Daniel never knew anything else except hospital, baby home, and that was it. The fact that he was so traumatised was that he'd never been out of those environments before, so he was brought out of that home to a completely different world, and with two strangers probably babbling at him in a foreign language, and he had never heard English before.
We couldn't go anywhere.
No.
Like, we couldn't leave him with anyone because he was waking
so
up every
upset,
night,
yeah.
and he was crying. Oh.
Yeah, you know, and that would be for about a year and a half. I always check on them and plant a kiss on their heads, you know, and initially you couldn't do that to Daniel because he would just cringe, you know. I suppose he wasn't used to anybody dealing with him on that close of a situation, so but now you can do anything to Daniel, you know. I kiss him every night and he never moves in the bed.
Me and Mummy.
We're best friends, aren't we?
Me and everyone is best friends.
Oh, you and everyone are best friends, yeah. Daniel's a real diplomat. I'd say he could be a future politician, will you, Daniel?
Why?
You like everybody, don't you?
I love you too. You all.
This is kind of a special time for myself and Daniel because once 3 o'clock comes, Catherine comes in and dinner has to be done and all that, so it's a very special time, yeah.
Neck.
Well done. You know, he's a very active child and he still likes to go a lot. Come on, out. Have a good day. I was worried about Catherine going to school. I was so worried about her. I was afraid that somebody would say something to her or be nasty to her, but we've never come across that. But, you know, everybody knows Catherine is adopted, so it's not that it's a big deal. Catherine?
Hosí an bata acu ag obair. Caiisiad an clig ag obair an rifra.
The principal there is just, you know, she's outstanding. She's been really, really helpful towards me and supportive with the two of them.
Daniel was diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit disorder, and works with a special needs assistant in school.
Daniel and Catherine know from day one that they were adopted, and we've always talked about it, and we've done a lot of reading and done a lot of workshops on it, and that's what, you know, you're advised to do, to speak about adoption. So it's not a big surprise for them. It's no big deal to them, you know. They know they're adopted. Daniel will tell you he's from Russia and he knows his name was Archon before he was adopted. Wash your teeth. We celebrate their adoption day as well as their birthdays. It's nice to celebrate that because their adoption day is a special day to us as their birthday. Their birthday is really, you know, for their birth parents, and we always think of their birth parents, especially on their birthdays, because it has to be a tough day for them, you know.
I couldn't imagine being any closer to 2 kids. I couldn't imagine life without the 2 that we have anyway.
I always say, if I was assured of everything in my life as I am, that Daniel loves me, I wouldn't have a worry for the rest of my life.
Can I hug you?
Oh, you can hug me anytime. Nice, love you.
Can I have a lick on your nose?
No, you can't. We don't know what it's like to have our own birth children, but I couldn't imagine loving a child that I would have given birth to any more than I love the 2 of them, you know.